Hi guys, welcome back. My name is Smangele, and I'm with Ulusiphiwo Mkhize. And I just want to put a disclaimer, guys. You can see the reason why I created these conversations was based on a personal experience as a child that went through or that witnessed gender-based violence, and also these conversations can be really triggering. So please, if you watch them, if you listen to them, please bear in mind it can open up old wounds. And obviously, I am not a psychologist, she is not a psychologist, but we are talking about a personal experience and just unpacking how I feel about what I went through.
And welcome back to episode 2. As Usmai has said, we really hope that these conversations really start to create conversations in your life and create spaces where you are starting to heal your journey and ready to become a better person and just have growth at the end of the day. And I think one of the things that we want to put out there, because we do know that the conversations that we're having can be triggering, and so yes, be aware of that as you start listening. But because we want to be a partner with you as you journey yourself into your healing space, Smai and I will be putting up on our pages details where you can reach out for psychologists, for counselors, crisis centers, for especially around the topics that we touch on. But I think it's very important that if you realize at some point while you're journeying with us through these episodes, if you realize that actually konte khona, that we have the resources on our pages available to you for you to reach out and find someone to talk to and who can walk with you from a clinical aspect of your healing journey. Cool, so jumping straight into episode 2. A recap really from the last episode, we got an overview of your life, we got an overview of who Usma was really as a 7-8-year-old, and you left us with the challenge that go and sit with your inner child. Go and see and listen to your inner child and see the wounds that are there, because that's really where a lot of our traumas are basically planted in our lives. And that's where you really start. Once you identify it, then you know how to actually move from there. So I guess then today we then move into the next phase of your life, which is being teenagers. And I think we're not that old. We all have, we can fully remember how we were as teenagers, the emotions we were going through, what was in our lives, and those are really formative years. They were really years where you decided, who am I? Yes, as the years progress, you refine it. Yes. But I think that's also when social influences come in, friends, family,
and everything
else also. Yes.
So going back to my teenagehood, so this was between I think 13 and 19 years of age. Sure. So this was a time where I was still staying with Gogo.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to Gogo nomkhulu, uMama Baba u2 and my aunt. Bonke bezimba kwama. Ma is the first child.
Okay.
And things were okay. I think I was at the period where I had just stopped thinking about visiting Ma.
Okay.
It was like, as in, and I didn't like the sight of seeing Uma because most of the cases, Makuliwa, and she would have to be rushed to hospital and all of that. So it was just not a right sight to enjoy. So I had decided to leave. And if Gogo says, okay, now we're gonna go visit Uma, because I think at one point I had realized Gogo lifestyle was affecting her as well. Because there was days where she would say, hey, and then she'd be like, ay, or you're bound to find so it was really affecting her as well, but she acted all strong. So school was going well, was participating at school, because part of participating in school kind of eliminated the thoughts of uma situation as a journey, and I was just finding ways to work around life and just enjoy life. Also, one thing I remember, I was a very jolly child. My mom was so smiley because I was a jolly child. And I remember Gogo used to shaya because nani lezes landa bangani so dlala izindlu ejardini ekhaya, so we'd go collect boxes and plastics and build houses in the end. So I was that child. And now looking back, I think I was that child because I always wanted to find something that could eliminate the thoughts of feeling lonely around ukumbuluma and all that. So I also wanted to act in a way that I would have wanted if my mom was closer to me. So I felt like I needed to be there for other people because Uma wasn't there for me. Even my father, well, upstate and Mazi, sorry for the word. Baba me, Yamazi, but Kumbula Semman and Zanga. So I feel like not having the love of Abazali, for me, young kids, and I feel like I need to be umzali wabantu, meaning I need to take care of that. Yeah. So I was a jolly child. Like I was very jolly. If Smangele yeah. Then she would ask me what's happening. And then also, literally Gogo would have to sit me down and be like, so I was a child that was being happy. And I think also I was a happy child because I think, like I said before, to eliminate all the thoughts. And then I think when I was in grade 10, I then moved to my aunt to go stay in just to focus more, because at least we were strict. So I just wanted to focus more. The last 2 years of my school were like the crucial parts, because that's when you got to choose who to focus on subject. So ngahamba safumana gogo ngahamba money, grade 10, grade 11, grade 12. At one point, umama said to me, "Sma, ngiyabona ukuthi indaba ukuthi ungayikhuluma wakuyakhathaza." And also because you chose not to do it anymore because this is how you feel about it. But I want you to keep something in mind, because umawako is not your project. You are not going to be there for her, for you to fix her. Yeah. No. Your project right now is to make sure that you fix your own life, so that when it turns out one day, it's something that you wanted it to be. Yeah. Don't put her in your plans to flu correct, flu social. Because I'm complaining, you know, every time when I go see my mom, I would say to her, and she would say no. And I think my sister in around 2017, I was like, okay, fine. Because I can't move you here or can't force you to leave this place, therefore I'm going to at least make surroundings to look better for you. You know? I bought her a new shirt and I was like, let's do away with the old one. And I think that was me accepting that there's nothing I can do with this one. You know? But at 18, at 17, I was frustrated with why isn't she doing what I want her to do? Because I could also see, because I've witnessed these things happening in her life, I could also see with, hey man, baby girl, suga. And she was also, no, I am not leaving this place. I think also for her, she didn't want to be a burden, mother figure people. Number one. Number two, she had friends that she had known for years. So now if she moves from where she stays to Wakogo, she needs to start now making friends. She doesn't have friends outside. Number three, I think it was freedom. When she's at her own place, she has all the freedom to do whatever that she wants to do. If she wants to go drink, she can do that. But obviously, there's limits, even though there was freedom for them to drink and sit down. But I think frequently. And then the other thing is, I think when she was at her own place, she was able to deal with her own skeletons in her own closet. Now, if she has to go walk, she would now need to structure her life and kind of like live a new life, because now we live in a certain environment, different principles, opposed to la de Tlhakon. So I think she just didn't want to come home because of those things. And I think also she still had the trauma that she went through when she was a child between Nina and Nomawaki, that she didn't want to face Magabuli, because I remember when she used to visit home, and things like that. So it made me realize so she would just not budge in. So me at 18, I was like, and I'm not going to be part of her life. But also I realized I was just upset, and I didn't want to do anything with her. Because sometimes she would call me and I'd get angry with why is she calling me? And then but in a short period of time, just to okay, sharp. And then she would make these talks sometimes. The way you care for Gogo, because I'll why? And at that moment I was like, hi Wena, you didn't do nothing for me. Why are you asking me for anything? And I think it was the phase where I love you was very hard for me to take from her.
Okay.
I remember I think towards my 20s, my 18s, my 19s, because I finished school at 19. My 19, my 20s, she used to say, "Must call me for the acting at time." And I'm like, okay, bye bye. Because it was so weird. It was so weird. As said it was so weird because you'd expect me to respond as a daughter, but we didn't have a connection at all. And I think the older I grew, well, in my teenagehood, the older I grew, it's more I was drifting apart from her. I was just drifting away from her. And I remember even visiting her, sometimes my mom Varashela, you feel an hour, 2, and then I'm out. And I didn't understand the anger that I had, but and I didn't know because but also I'm like, there is no connection. There was no mother and daughter kind of a connection. And I think that's how my teenage years were. I was angry at her. I was, because of first that I was born, I'm like, I'm phone. But yeah, there's a lot of things.
As always, you say a lot. You said a lot. And which is fine also, because I think one of the things we don't realize with trauma is that it can steal our voice. And you find yourself mute and not quite sure how to express yourself, where to start, where to begin. And I think the beautiful thing when you start the healing journey is let your voice start to actually, you can hear it in your ears. Let it come out, let it say what it needs to say. And I think also, don't be so focused on gizoti, just speak. And in that, we'll figure it out. And in the many things about the Uzi there are quite a number of things I want to touch on. And I want us to explore, and I want us to sit in them.
Okay.
And I think one of them is, the first question which I have for you is that you say you have decided that I'll set and I just want to know, how did you get to that decision? Because last time you said you had this void in you, is kalasama, and you just wanted to be with your mom. And now we flip into now being a teenager, and I think one of the things about being a teenager is figuring yourself out and starting to be vocal about angithandi lento or ngiyayithanda lento, and wanting to be an individual and wanting to be seen, wanting to be heard. But I just want to know, when you make that decision, angeke ngisayiluma. How did that make you feel?
Yo. I think I was angry. I was angry because I don't think my mom understood how I felt about her lifestyle. I don't think she knew. Even though as much as I tried to show her, I'm I don't like it. But she couldn't see it. And also, there was no change after seeing him change. And so I had realized I'd stop going there because I don't want to witness these fights anymore. You know? And like I said, I think Gankwatile. More than when and it doesn't feel nice. It doesn't look nice because now every time I saw really so poorly there's a scar left. And just for me to be counting all these scars that I could see in her body, in her face, you know, it wasn't a nice feeling. And I think for me to decide what I'm cycle was, I don't want to witness this anymore. So even though but like I said, there was other things that I wanted to focus on that helped me to walk away from that experience. You know? Even though it wasn't walking away from an experience because it was still inside of me, I had bottled it inside, but it was okay, siyakhatha, siyaphoza manje, sense sobuya sidinga ngalo mama lo at a later stage. So I think I was angry more than anything else.
And you mentioned the word angry quite a bit when you speak of how you felt towards Uma and the situations like it in your teenagehood. But on the flip side also, you speak of her being a jolly child. So I guess that balance of anger and it coming out as jolly. But I'm going to ask you to do something for me.
Okay.
And it goes back to the conversation we had last week about sitting in our emotions and understanding that we are a full human being, which means we have all sorts of emotions within us. And in order for us to truly know and how we're feeling, what needs to happen, how do we move from here, we need to identify all of those things. All of the way that we're feeling and be able to resolve it then from there. Because sometimes when we don't identify the emotion, we can identify the situation and then quickly fall into the solution and logical solution for the situation. But then we leave the emotion behind. And to me, it means you leave yourself behind because you are also an emotional being. So to also identify those emotions and then move from there. How do you then move from there? And one of the things that, and I want you to tell me what you think of this, this thought that I have, that when we express anger, it is the covering emotion to smaller ones in between. So there are other things that build towards it, and the expression that comes out is anger. So I want you to take a moment, even if you have to just sit and just close your eyes for a moment and think to yourself, if I take the cover of anger off, what were the emotions that were the building blocks that had me then react in anger? When you think of Usma as a teenager and she's angry towards Uma, what actually was the true emotions under the anger?
I think for me, more than anything else, it was presence Gamma, which was absent. It was presence Gamma, I wanted her to be a provider for me because the situation in England wasn't that well off. So support as well. I think it was the major two things was those two. Her absence and her support. I think the first time one was something, maybe it was like 2 years ago, if I remember correctly. The first time my ex started doing 10 years. Maybe it was 2 years ago. So all this time, all these years in my teenagehood, the relay was on Gogo and but the major relay was on Gogo. And obviously Umam wouldn't step in to say, no, I'll take over from here when I was doing my grade 10. And so it was longing for that experience of buying something or be there for me or be here next to me as well, you know. Also, Malkona, ungahlali one day and just leave. You know. I think it was those two things, the support that I needed from her and the presence that I needed from her. I think more than anything else, Uma finances, your presence can cover for a lot of things that they don't have or that you can't give to them. You being there for them physically, sitting down with them, explaining more things that are going bad, therefore you can't have much of them. Other than unga bikona and then unga show up and then unga support. You know, it's another thing because it makes you question, why do I have a mother? Why are you here? And why is that someone else has to fold your shoes? For me, it is absence and support. That was hard off.
So, and thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. And what you've shared with me, Ro, is what you needed from your mom, which was his support and was her presence.
Yes.
I still want to circle back on the emotions.
Yes.
What were you feeling when you think of Usma as a teenager? What were your emotions? So the two words you've used already as you're sharing is anger and joy. But I want to understand under the anger, what were you feeling? Not what you needed from Uma. What was Usma feeling like? And if you can't and you're still trying to figure that out, it's okay. But I guess I don't want us to miss the feeling. What was the emotion?
Can we cover this on the next episode? Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. Can we cover this on the next
It's
episode?
okay. And I just want to highlight this because I asked how was my feeling as a 7 and 8-year-old, and your response was you were a child who understood. So it was a literal response. I just understood. But you still were not able to share how I was feeling. Because becoming a child who understands means that you felt something and you concluded that how I'm going to deal with these emotions is to be a child who understands. Then as a teenager, you felt something and you concluded that I'm going to be angry and I'm going to be jolly. So take the time that you need. And I think this is also the challenge even for myself. As I'm also on my journey and I'm working through my stuff, it's to stop and what is the emotion which has gotten me to the conclusion of being a perfectionist, to the conclusion of being a jolly child, to the conclusion of being a child who understands, the conclusion there was something I was feeling and I was needing that wasn't met. So yeah, I guess that's my challenge out there. So I think, okay, then moving on from there, I think one of the things, you said such a beautiful thing, as if you have and Umamane said to you, Ubutena, you are not your mother's savior. And that is a big bomb, even in my life.
It was.
You are not your mother's savior. We are no one's savior at the end of the day.
Yes.
And I just want to know, but you then continued and said, Ubuti, then you got to a point where you started working and you thought to yourself, well, Uma doesn't want to leave here and come here. let me meet her halfway by building her something, which is still a savior mentality. Which is still a savior mentality. You're just trying to figure it out. Okay, go by looking at what's in getting at. You're just trying to figure it out that way. So I guess I want to know then, when Umamane shared that wisdom with you, you are not your mother's savior. And as children, we are not our parents' saviors. We are not here. Our parents are here to parent us, and we are here to be children. What did that make sense to you? Did it hit home? Did it not? What were you hearing when she was telling you that?
It had a nerve, to tell the truth. I was like, because I felt like she didn't understand how I was feeling at that point. I felt like she was saying to me, give up.
Okay.
That's how I felt. Because trust me, as much as I am not my mom's savior, but she is part of my life. And I think at some point I had decided to tell him, no, mama, because like I said, at some point there was roles that were reversed now. I felt like I was her and then she was me. Now I was taking care of her. And me getting to a point where now I had switched roles, it was me working towards that. I was like, if she couldn't do certain things for me, I'm gonna understand that there was probably reasons why she didn't. And probably there was reasons why Bianca won't support me on that. Because I'm going to make mistakes and so therefore I'm going to work hard and then I'm going to give her the things that she didn't have in her life. Probably, I don't know, that was a way of me healing myself. I'm going to do these things for her because she has never had anyone doing these things for her. But my aunt dropping that bomb at me at 17, I was like, baby girl, I'll understand. I understand the pain you me, and you are talking from an experience from an outside. I wasn't doing my parents anymore. And at first I took it in and I was like, okay, my mom accept project time. I accept project time, and so I need that. But at the back of my mind, there was still that love that I had towards her. There was still that wanting to work on her that I still had at the back of my mind, And even though being but bungasabi as often. And mangifikile kuba ukuthi ngizokubona and then ngihambe. Because I felt like I still want her. I still want to see her. I still want us to talk. Even though ayikho connection, but ngizoyifoster. I'm not just going to leave her like that. And also because I wasn't happy with the environment that she stayed in. I wasn't at all. Because the best I can do is just keep visiting her. And that's how I felt when my aunt dropped that quote on me. You're not going to save your mom. And accept project that could work on yourself. And I think at that age, kind of I felt tired and just it's okay. Actually, bygones will leave them be bygones. But kono kunye ohamba nakho as you progress with your life. Lokhu ngizomane ngokusebenza simane siqhubeka elifini until I get to a point where it's sekulungile. Like you said on the first episode, healing is about dropping down those bags, now start unpacking. There's those bags that when you say bygones are bygones, we are entitled to one day, she was that kid. I was like, even if I decided to answer again, I was like, Gizomane number 9. One day, Zohana pants in Buzu. This is quite in life. What happened? So that's how I felt at that moment, or how everything turned out. Yes.
And being the woman that you are now, looking back and remembering your aunt's wisdom, the journey of then understanding you're not your mother's savior. How have you progressed through that through the years? When did you continue to be her savior right up until the end? Or did you learn, did that wisdom drop into your heart?
I think I didn't stop truly and honestly, I did. That was that thing that just said, you can't leave her. You can't. She's part of you, you know. And even though, like I said, visiting her became less and lesser, but I would force myself. Yeah, no, and therefore I'm gonna go. I'm gonna force myself. Even if it's just to see her for 30 minutes and then come back, it's okay. And I think after I had my first clinical psychologist session, and then she also said that to me. She said to me, you need to stop doing all the things that you're doing for your mom. You are not her boyfriend. You are not her mother. You are her kid. She is actually supposed to be doing what you're doing to her, to you. So now I must stop taking groceries to my mom. And I know. But also she kind of opened my eye.
Yeah.
The one thing that I loved about her that she did instantly was for us to, let's go back to childhood. Tell me about your childhood. And she said, go back to your mom, ask her all these things that you're telling me now. Find out from her side. What's gonna be there for you, you know. But also she mentioned you're not your mom person, all like that, and get candies. But yeah, looking back now, like, I did transition to someone that understood my mom better.
Okay.
I also tried to understand her choices, her decisions in her life, and I was like, angihlangene ndawo nama-decisions kama ukuthi wachoose the life le ayishuzile. Mina, all I'm going to do right now is going to try and fix myself, the trauma that I had, and then also try and reach out to her to understand what figure out. But also me asking her at some point, so begin, you know, it's go right, as people in your life, I'm going to start taking care of you.
So that's nice. And I guess thank you for the honesty also of actually saying, no, I actually never stopped being my mother's savior. And I think the tricky thing with that is there's that thin line of I now am an adult, I now have means, I now have resources, and I want to plow back the pie. I want to assist at home, I want to you know, because it's something which brings me joy. But I think it's where your heart is at. There's the intent of your heart. If your heart is sitting in a place of joy and it pours out, versus now the thin line where you're now stepping into the savior mentality and you feel obligated to do that. And that's another topic for another day. And I think the thing that comes up for me in Jabanje Ukuluma about, no, I never stopped in some shape or form being my mother's savior, even though I knew there were things I was we influence again, but I still couldn't stop. I still needed to look after Umawami. I guess I want to ask the question of boundaries and how boundaries then look, how your relationship with Umawako and how it was working throughout the years. How did that influence or your understanding and therefore you applying boundaries in your life, and not just towards her, but just because as we've come to know, trauma just doesn't only affect one area of your life. It shows up in many different spaces in many different ways. And I think I want to understand boundaries and how that showed up in your life.
Sure. I think first thing that I did was I got to my cleaner. I was like, I'm not gonna give you money. Physical money. No, you need something. I started to take because most of the time, well, no go I used to tell me, do you know, njalo money is money. Yes, we to pay joy the minutes. And then also phone fruits at Angnambupu. So first boundary that I set was okay, so you can make money against almost 10 years ago. So time to 10 grocer, spoon it's okay. So mniga mhlambu 3, 4, 500 for you to cover paraffin and then it's just you know. And then the other thing I think I set boundary on was a situation like at that point overwhelming because once you start relationships as well, it's a mirror image of what you went through. And I was like, you know what? The more I think about her, it's like the more I choose people that I date. And my sister's Tandana, feeling big and it wasn't right. Because I'm getting expectations and duration. Yeah, I'm from the long trial. Even though I'm going to be upfront with, I don't want someone who's going to be physical with me.
Yeah.
But also, it kind of changed also the mentality in people that I spoke to or people that I dated. Once I feel like I'm very Nyamalale, I because myself was protected all the time.
Yes.
And I think also that wasn't right because we just misinterpret how the person meant or what the person meant. Saying he started saying we need a place to I'm running away. But the boundaries that I had set with her was I wasn't gonna give her money, a lot of money. Whatever she needs and I'm able to drive for wherever I am to come help you, I'll do it so. And then just to the mentality of shifting my mom's problems away from me so that I prepare myself for my own relationship because obviously it's a different experience. But however I did shift that away, it always came up.
Yeah.
It affected me in terms of people that I chose. And nangsaba my relationship says to mama because ngangifila ngathi angeke ngikhona ukuphuma kulo situation.
Yes.
I'll be stuck like her she was ngangifila ngeke ngikhona ukuphuma. And then I think the other boundary that I had set with her was the thing is my mom was a very sensitive case that was closer to my heart. So even if ngangifuna izinto ngifisela izinto ngisazenzela kufanele angazenzi zazingiphatha kahle. So ngangithi okay, this month sizoshintsha umkhukhu. The next month udingana ukuyifinisha ngaphakathi. So I was planning things for her. I don't know mangithi udingana. Vela nje ngifuna imali mina. So I said no, I'm going to start doing things for you so that you have a comfortable life. But also, no money was the first boundary. Because umnike imali mhlawumbe sasafuna ukugoga imali goga fonele mina futhi athi yabona ngangitshela ukuthi ungamnikeza imali cash ngithengele izinto.
Okay. So as we're talking about boundaries and those boundaries that you put down for your mom, on just how you could function in that relationship. And I think that is the purpose of boundaries. Boundaries really are about creating healthy spaces.
Yes.
Where you are able to function in there, but not just function from a case of just I'm getting through it, but truly function and it be a healthy
set it out there.
Yeah, it's a healthy environment. And as you were talking, I was going to ask around relationships in your life. And not just romantic relationships, but I think of relationships towards your family, relationship towards, all other people that have been in your life, but then you started touching on the romantic relationships part, which is a very important one because teenagehood, that's where we just on time start seeing people looking gorgeous and you're just like, ooh, okay, he's saucy, he's nice. But we don't realize, and I think it's something that you just mentioned now, but I'm wondering back then, did you realize that Joba Balega when things look like they are? And did you realize back then that it's because of what's going on in my life, or only now you're reflecting back?
I think only now that I'm reflecting back. Back then it looked like yo namzoshaiwa and then I'd walk away. I remember there was this one relationship that I had. I think that was the only relationship in my life. I think that guy was a starting point for me. Yeah. I was like, getting pinned for Mutofanalo. He made me realize, no, you can actually choose not to be part of a cycle. He was physical. I didn't want to like one. I'm like, no. It just took me back to my mom. it's experience. And I'm like, no, if this is how it falls, uma wami masekakwaziyo ukufila kanjani. I'm like, no, we're not gonna get to the point. And I made it clear with him. I was like, Butiza iyaphela today. Le mpama yakho le, it's the end of it. I think I was around 16, 17, 16. And at 16, I had made the decision that I would never enter any relationship that looks like that. From how he spoke, this guy, to how he acted and things, I was like, these are things that I'm going to remember. And I think some of those things that he had in him, in his personality, it's things that my mom's boyfriend had. So his first attempt of hitting me, it kind of reminded me, no. This is not the life that I wanted to live. This is not the life that I want to live going forward. So I'm gay. And I think as I grew older, no, perfect man, now reality is you're dealing with everyone in general, but I think but these are my intentions. What are your intentions? And I think also that having that mentality, it helped me because and if it wasn't something that I wanted, I'm very just and yeah.
And how old were you? How old was he?
He wasn't that old. I think he was like 3-4 years older than me.
And how old were you?
I was 16, 17.
So you're both basically under 21.
Yes.
And I just want to highlight that because I think sometimes we don't realize just how early our traumas can start living themselves out in our lives.
Definitely.
And how we are groomed in society, how early those things start to live themselves out in our lives. You are 16, showing
Your
boyfriend. And just to show how early those things can start. And if we are not aware of what I want and what I don't want. And I guess in your case though, all what I want and what I don't want was based on trauma. And not necessarily from a healthy space where you just understand what I deserve this type of love. Therefore anything that doesn't look like it, I need fool me. So in a way it saved you, but also it was still an unhealthy because it was coming from a place of still trauma from you, fear from you. I mean, and a simple disagreement and you were out the door. Meantime, relationships are there are elements of disagreement because we're two human beings trying to make one new life here. If you are in a lifelong partnership space, so disagreements will actually happen. But I think one of the things that comes up when you think of trauma, especially from a GBV space, is conflict resolution is something that we shy away from or say saba, and we don't know how to be in spaces of conflict. And conflicts can be good because as khulume about what we're talking about and find resolutions and grow from it. Conflict, I think sometimes we need to understand that in society there are certain words we've given negative connotations to. Meantime, they are good. So even when you think of the word consequence means it's an outcome of an action. But we've now made it as if it's a negative outcome of an action. So I think it's for us to realize those things, but to also just, last week you challenged us, let's go back to our childhood, what was going on where our trauma started. But also now we're talking about being in our teens and how those things start to really cement themselves in there. And how are your relationships with other people? Like I think of Joba Utu, how were you in the house, because was she married?
Yes.
And was she in a healthy relationship? So you coming from where you're coming from, sitting in this house, how was that for you?
That space was heaven, if I can put it in there. Julie, it was something because lapha kwakungabizwana ngamagama. Kwakumama kabanibani, baba kabanibani, and then kwakungasi wawungathi omunye umuntu he wena. You would have to call. Mangafuna ukuza unokuthula. Unokuthula mangafuna ukuzamini bekathi sisi because they had 2 kids by the time when I went there. They had 2 daughters. So I was the older one. Kwakusisi nosisi omncane nabo when they address us kwabanye abantu usisi kanokuthula unokuthula ukhansila. So it was healthy. And I think from that point I had said to myself, this is how I want to live my life. This is what I want. Ngathi noma sengiqala ngithi ngifuna ukujola nomuntu ofana baba nokuthola likhulu bayahloniphana nekhaya. It kind of also helped because at that teenagehood for me, like I said, it was a time where I was filtering things out towards okay, so I think they came in at the right point because they made me realize okay, actually this is the life that I want. Well, particularly not their life, but finally peace. This is the peace that I want. And obviously living with them for 3 years every day, I was like, okay, this is how we get to this peace. This is how we address things with them. You would never. Worst case scenario will be one coming to me and say, and like there was no bad mouthing of each other, there was no shouting of each other in front of kids. I think it was peace, there was peace there. And I think at that moment kakana saying director so and I think it was that point in life where I realized personally I started caring for people. You know, and okay, caring for people brings me peace. Tupendo ukuthi bekitha noma mhlambe ngihamba ngesikoleni ngizohlangana nomuntu endleleni mhlambe odobhayo nginemali nganginika nginokudla kanginika, it will bring me so much peace. Even after sengiqala ukusebenza ngidibana nawe endleleni ngathi sham uzilambele asidle ntwana, you know, kino 5 rand, let's go buy this. It will bring me so much peace. Futhi ngangithanda ukwenza kakhulu abantu abadala. If I find abantu abadala sesigangeni umuntu plastic ngangimuphi imali, I would rather walk even if mhlambe womene ngigibele ngisuka from kwagokunye kwamamncane walk ngithatha lo mali ngimnike umuntu because it will bring me so much peace. So the peace that they had for me, it was a reflection of what I wanted. Ngathi masesengishada to 2019, he had a bit of resemblance of ubaba omncane. Structure body-wise, inkulumo yakhe, ubuphansi bakhe. Even though there was things that we struggled with, and that's the reason why we sat down and realized, you know what, we've pushed this for 4 years and it's not happening. So it's fine, let's call it a quit. But in relationship, to have a reflection of relationship, there was so much to talk about because we looked alike, you know. We spoke the same thing. And at that point, I was happy. I was like, you know what, this is what I always wanted in life. You know, this was the relationship, the peace, the space that I wanted. That and now they used to enjoy us coming over because to them, I think it was the younger version of themselves when they looked at us. So me being in their space gave me peace. This is when I went.
And you know, last time we spoke about silver linings, and you shared about you had a counselor, bring you in for the night and look after you and take you to work the next day. And here also you've got Umamani, Nomalume, who bring you in also and give you a space, basically refuge also. For Jabalato Usho, it was an important time in your life. We think that is schooling, so to help you focus, but also to give you stability. Because I think that's the thing we spoke about last week, is that it was just that lack of stability. And I just want us to always go back to that, is that in amongst our storms in life, there are spaces of refuge that we get given. There are silver linings that we are surrounded by, and let's not miss them, because it's finding that balance and realizing and using those lessons ukuthi in as much as kumsangano kodwa there are those moments and those pockets in life that we're given. Njengoba nje usho ukuthi these pockets in life allowed you to really actually, this is what I want for my life, and to redirect yourself also ukuthi, you know what, this is also part of life, and I can want this for myself, and I deserve this for myself. So I guess that's the thing which let's not miss those moments that we get given of just peace and refuge within our storms. We said a lot again today, and I really hope Uti, in what you've shared today, someone out there really is going to gain something from it. I mean, today you shared with us your journey between 13 and 19, and just and how you moved from a place of longing for Uma to a place now where you are putting up your boundaries, and which are very important. But you also is something which we still are going to unpack, and you'll tell me when you're ready to unpack that, are the emotions that are heavy around those times. So going back to when you were 7 and 8 from the last episode, and today when we speak about being a teenager, and the emotions which get us to anger, which get us to shutting things down, which gets us to akusekho lapho. And though you mentioned, in as much as ngingasho ukuthi akusekho lapho, and when you move on in life, you still take it with you. Like you said, ama-suitcase akho, in as much as you think uyawashiya, uyawavala, you still take them with you. And at some point, azokusinda. So I really want to thank you also for allowing us even more into your life, and sharing with us just even the joys that you found within that space. And there's always so much still to unpack. I mean, there is relationships, and how the relationships that we step into and the men that we choose at the end of the day sometimes are just a pure reflection of the traumas that we have, because that is all I know.
Yes.
So therefore that is what I choose. And how do we then move from that into a space of more knowledge, and how your aunt and uncle gave you a different picture, therefore you're able to start choosing differently. So there's also that element that at some point we can unpack on how do we realize our hurts and traumas and how they influence decisions in our lives, in all aspects of our lives. But yeah, I think that's for me. I don't know what you would like to share.
So yeah, today's episode was mostly about me filtering things that now I want to work on. And even though part of me wanted to leave Uma aside, but she kept being part of me going forward. While the suitcase doing a and even though people around would say focus on other things, yes, she remained suitcase and she used to remind me of how much she was proud of me, even though she was distant. I think those smaller things that she used to say to me, no one day to get him mechanic, what the woman is and taking on to this episode, I would like everyone to visit their teenagehood, revisit those things that made you survive the storms that you're going through during your teenagehood, during the trauma that you experience, and you would see it's things that we built from, experiences that we built from. Me, now decided I'm gonna start being a different child, and me seeing man gave me a different perspective of life, and I'm like, okay, this is what I'm going on. And that experience also made me survive, that made me and this is the life that I want. So go back to your teenagehood and look at the things that made you strong, that made you realize I'm not my problems, and I'm not going to be my problems, and I will never be my problem. So therefore, progress life. Go back to those moments. Identify them. It's okay. These were the moments actually that made me be strong in all the trauma that I went through. And obviously, thank you so much. And we will see you on the next episode because it's about Nandi.
You are not your problems.
You are not your problems. Always remember that. Problems are there, yes, but they are not you. They don't identify you. They don't sum up your life. You can always build from those problems. I usually tell my stylist, you must have your problems for breakfast. Put your problems on your plate, beg your fucking knife, and eat them for breakfast because you are not your problems and they can't define you. They will never. They shouldn't define you. Thank you guys.
Thank you.